Good job, amazing stuff you've been doing. I noticed at the end you're no longer head of the organization. What do you do now?
I did quite a lot. I thought my time had come to step down from that. I still oversee the seed vault in Norway. It's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that the Global Crop Diversity Trust had projects. We had projects in 90 different countries, and plus the seed vault and a number of other things. And so I'm happy not to have the day-to-day responsibility for all of that, but I kept the seed vault part. And I do a number of other things, all in this area.
Yeah, I'm originally from Romania, and I know Romania has very special seeds that is wheat and corn. Have you ever visited Romania, Eastern Europe, countries like this?
Can you all hear the question?
Do they have a?
Sorry. The question was about Romania and if I visited in Eastern Europe. Yes, of course. Actually not Romania. I haven't been there, but we've gotten good cooperation from Eastern European countries in this effort.
They have wonderful variety of corn seeds.
Yes.
Unique to the world.
Indeed.
But there's something.
That as the seeds diminish, that there's often civil strife, and I wonder if you can, it's mentioned with all the strife that's in the world today, places like Afghanistan and Iraq, loss of life, what's happening to how they're feeding their people?
Yeah. Well, I think that, one of the...
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, sorry. What's happening in some of these areas where you have a lot of civil strife, I guess, to both the agriculture and the seed collections. We have lost seed collections, in part at least, in a number of these countries. I think that's in the film, but I do still maintain this file on my computer about gene bank horror stories, and we do have losses all the time.
And we lost the one in Afghanistan during the war.
Yeah. But there's really not a country on earth, including our own, that's treating their most precious natural resource properly. We've had budget cuts to our own seed bank, so we have a great facility. Very good equipment. It's a great gene bank, but you can walk down the hallways and see empty laboratories where, because they've cut funding for postdocs and such, so there's not enough money there to support doing research on these materials. And it's not good enough, just to conserve the diversity. The whole point is to use it. And to use it, we need to research it so we know what the traits are that are contained in these collections. And that's an incredibly, I used to go to talk to governments a lot, and I would say, if you can find a better way to invest government money that's more cost efficient and has a bigger payoff, do it. And I would say that very forcefully. And it would give them the idea, well, maybe we ought to think about this a little bit, because we can't actually think of anything that has a return on investment. The economists have studied this with about 60 to 1. I can't think of any government expenditure that has a return of 60 to 1.
Cary, how big does an organization have to be to have seeds in Svalbard?
It doesn't have to be big, but we take duplicate copies of the seeds. So what we can't do is to accept the primary responsibility for the care of the sample. And the reason is that Svalbard needs to be sustainable, and it's in a remote location. So we can't have laboratories up there, we can't have staff, we can't be doing all the testing. That responsibility stays with the owner of the seed. So that sort of rules out you know, mom and pop, and, I mean, we do get letters sometimes, well, my grandmother had this seed, and could you store it in the seed vault? And we don't really know how to do that kind of thing. But we do have collections from countries, from institutions, from NGOs, you know, private organizations like Seed Savers Exchange, and did I say universities, and, you know, facilities like that.
Have you been working with marijuana seeds?
Well,
Good question.
yeah, it's a good question. The question is about marijuana, and
In California.
and you know, at first when the seed vault opened, we did get these questions, and I sort of routinely said, no, we don't have any marijuana, because it's really limited to food and agriculture, and frankly, I didn't want the publicity of that. You know, we were trying to establish a serious institution and everything, but then I realized after a while that the Nordic Gene Bank actually has 6 or 7 samples of marijuana in its national gene, the Nordic Gene Bank. So yeah, we do actually have some.
How do you duplicate
Yeah.
seed?
Right.
How do you
How
copy
How do you
them?
duplicate,
Copy.
copy a
How do you
seed
copy the seeds?
It's how do you duplicate seeds? It's very easy.
and send it in?
Uh,
You grow them out.
A gene bank will take some seeds out, grow them, harvest more seeds. That's it.
Other comment. Growing up in the eastern part of the United States, there were many, many varieties of apples that
Yes.
I remember as a kid. Every state, every major area of a state had an apple.
Yeah.
That was a little bit different. I also remember that we ate apples that were scarred, that were bruised.
Yeah.
And it's something that we don't, that the public today will not accept. And I think there is some education of the public in this regard to accept something less than a perfect fruit or vegetable.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm growing myself about 120 varieties of apples. Many of them are very old, hundreds of years old, trace their history way back. And I can tell you that the ones that are really ugly looking wouldn't have survived this long if they weren't really good tasting. They're not being sold on their looks.
And there's an orchard in Portland that has probably the largest variety of apples that we know of. What is it, Cary, 4,000, about 4,000?
Yeah.
Varieties of apples that's owned by a 93-year-old man
Yes.
who needs help with that collection. And so we're trying to help him.
I think it's the largest apple collection in the world.
Wow.
And it was assembled by this man who's very old, and of course that's a tenuous situation. So a new little organization sprung up to graft his apples onto rootstock to move it to a more secure location and save these varieties. I know he has a lot of varieties that the United States government and none of the European governments have, so it's unique material.
And the information is on our website too, if you're interested in finding out more about that. Yes.
Can you tell us how you got involved with the project and how long it took to shoot the film?
I was reading an article. A friend of mine had sent me an article that was in the New Yorker. It was called Sowing for the Apocalypse. And I was at breakfast one morning reading that article, and my husband was on the speakerphone. And I'm reading about Cary Fowler, and I noticed my husband is talking to someone named Cary. I don't really think much about it. And I get to a line in the article that says Cary had to get $30 million to collect the seeds. And I hear my husband ask this person on the phone, how much did you have to get to collect the seeds? And he says $30 million. So when he hung up the phone, I said, was that Cary Fowler you were talking to? And he said, yeah, how do you know Cary Fowler? So I had this sort of incredibly synchronistic thing happen, and I was able to get Cary's phone number from my husband. So I called him up, and he was coming to Memphis that summer, and I decided I would interview him. I did about an 8-hour interview. It was 110 in the shade in Memphis, and I had his feet in a bucket of ice water during part of that interview because it was so
That's
hot.
actually true.
And that is
That's not
actually
an
true.
exaggeration.
And so I knew I had a guy who was gonna stick it out. And it's a good thing because it took me 8 years to make the film.
Wow.
Yes.
Dr. Fowler, thanks for coming. You touched upon the economics of what you're doing, 60-to-1 return on investment. Could you describe to us why agribusiness, Monsanto's, and all these other companies aren't pursuing that method? Are they experiencing 1,000-to-1 return on investment? I mean, how would you characterize what the good sides are doing as opposed to the bad sides?
Well, it is all linked together, and the national gene bank that we have in this country, which is in Fort Collins, Colorado, it operates a little bit like a library. So anyone, any bona fide researcher, plant breeder, can request copies of seeds from them for their plant breeding work. That would include the smallest seed company in the world, and it would include Monsanto. It really is like a public library.
But why aren't